Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today we're going to go back to talking about The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. But first, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Jennifer. Thanks for watching, Jennifer. I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, and it really means a lot that you're taking some time to relax and enjoy this video. I hope you have a great day. And if your name isn't Jennifer, then subscribe and maybe I'll say your name next time. Anyway, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the weird-ass politics of Book 2 of the Inheritance Cycle. Now, all art is political, and there are a lot of different political messages woven throughout these books, but most of them aren't directed at the reader in the same way that the messages in Book 2 are. For example, you could say that these books have an anti-authoritarian message because it's about an evil king getting overthrown because he's evil. Or you could say it has a pro-authoritarian message because he immediately gets replaced by a queen who also has absolute authority, but whatever. But either way, the characters never rant on and on about how this system of government is fundamentally corrupt or the only true way or whatever. It's just built into the story. It's not said directly to the audience in a way that feels like a lecture. But in Book 2, many political messages are said directly to the audience in a way that feels like a lecture, and they are some of the weirdest takes I have seen. So for reference, Book 2 is 60% about Eragon learning magic from the elves and getting accustomed to elven society in the process. And the rest of the book is spent on Rorin and the battle at the end and some of Nasuada's preparations that lead up to her getting to fight in a battle and shit. The background shit that no one cares about right now. We'll get to it later. But during the time that Eragon is getting to know elven society, there are often pages spent explaining the elven philosophy directly to him in a way that feels like Paolini is just explaining his personal beliefs directly to the audience. And it is some weird shit. So first of all, the elves are fundamentally against the idea of a god or religion in general. Now this is very weird for a fantasy novel where magic is real to just be like, no, God can't exist. The only reason you would believe in that is if you're dumb and ignorant and don't look at the facts. But dragons and bull people are real? Okay, sure. Why is God a step too far in your world where characters can summon fire just by saying its name in the special language? What? Even if there was some way to empirically prove that God doesn't exist in our world, which there isn't, why would that preclude God from existing in a fictional world where magic is real? Doesn't that seem like exactly the kind of setting where you would put a deity? Several deities? But instead, a huge amount of ink is spilled throughout the course of this book, just explaining why the dwarves are dumb and wrong for having religious beliefs. They're just ignoring the evidence and the facts, and we elves know the truth. And it's just so condescending and shitty. It just feels like you're listening to some dipshit like The Amazing Atheist from 2008 or whatever, and it's awful. It's awful. Now, don't get me wrong, there are lots of legitimate reasons why people don't believe in religion, and there are lots of legitimate reasons why people do. And the idea that you are fundamentally superior to other people, smarter than other people because you don't believe the same things as them, is still a shitty belief. That's a shitty attitude, no matter what side of it you're coming from. Now, it's possible that you're meant to understand that this is a shitty belief, because while Eragon does kind of parrot everything the elves tell him for a little while, he eventually starts thinking for himself and decides to, give religious views a bit of a chance, but he never, settles. He's just kind of, wishy-washy on it, which is also fair. it can be difficult to figure out what you should or shouldn't believe if you have a bunch of conflicting information and you don't know what is and is not empirical and yada yada. My basic point is that despite what this book may lead you to believe, people are allowed to believe or not believe whatever the fuck they want as long as they aren't hurting people, and acting smugly superior to people who believe different things than you just makes you a dick. It doesn't make you right. And even if you are right, don't act smugly superior. You still just come off as a dick. And also, there is no objective way to prove one way or the other what religions are right or wrong, if any. That's just not a thing we can prove with science and math. It's just outside of our experimental scope. Now, the other message that the elves seem to be primarily pushing is veganism, which is much more defensible, but also, there's a lot of reasons why it's not necessarily as good as enthusiasts claim. For one thing, humans didn't evolve to be vegan. We evolved to be omnivorous and eat both meat and vegetables. And all studies indicate that the more balanced our diet is between a variety of food sources, the healthier we are. So maybe cutting one food source out entirely isn't the best option, even if in our current situation we can create substitutes to a certain degree. Now, maybe when we can make lab-grown meat, the dynamics of that change a bit. Maybe it's different then. But there are a lot of reasons why people eat meat, up to and including it's all they have available. It is the most calorie dense, the most nutrient dense food available. And if you're poor or you live in a food desert, you kind of just take what you can get. And you definitely want to prioritize things that are going to keep you healthy and keep you energized as much as possible. And flat out, a pound of meat has way more in it than a pound of kale. It's not even a close comparison. And guess what? A pound of beef costs dramatically less than a pound of kale. Now, obviously, the numbers on that vary depending on what kind of vegetable and whatnot, right? Corn is dramatically cheaper than kale, or soy, or whatever. But, there are lots of reasons why people eat meat, and you're not morally superior for not doing it. You just happen to have means that other people don't. This is even more explicitly true in the world of Eragon, because Eragon grew up in a place where he explicitly had to hunt in order to supplement their diet for the winter, because they could not get enough food from just their harvest. He had to hunt. That's explained explicitly in the opening. That's why he's in the mountains, because that's where he hunts. And so if our main character had to hunt in order to survive, how many other people had to hunt in order to survive? Can you really be moralizing to people who have to do what they have to do to live? I mean, And more substantially than that, the primary justification for why the elves, and by extension Eragon, and by extension the audience, should be vegan is that magic users can see into the minds of creatures and know what their thoughts and feelings are. And once you've experienced an animal's thoughts, it's hard to kill them because you can, empathize with them and shit. And sure, but one, you don't have to mind meld with an animal before you kill it. You don't have to do that. And in fact, you don't do that if someone just brings you a steak. You didn't ever meet the animal that came from. But two, this whole mind meld thing doesn't just affect animals, it also affects plants. Plants also have a mental space that magic users can see into and observe. It's just very alien because plants obviously don't think the way that animals think. And so, as a result, it comes off very hypocritical. Oh, it's wrong to eat animals because you can see inside their brain. But it's okay to eat plants because you can also see inside of their brain. What? I mean, the weird line that vegans draw between plants and animals already doesn't make sense to me in real life, but when you explicitly go out of your way to make it a part of the lore that they also have a brain and shit, how does that work? Now, I think that Paolini probably got pushback on these messages and or realized how weird his phrasing of them was, because in later books they're all but completely dropped. For example, Eragon goes super vegan in book 2, but by like chapter 3 of the third book, he's back on the meat train. It's not quite chapter 3, but it's pretty near the beginning. And when you look at the actual timeline of events, it means that Aragon was on the like ultra vegan lifestyle for like 2 months. He's that weird, annoying friend you have who goes vegan for 2 months and acts all superior about it, but then you see them a month later and they're eating a burger and you just look at them like, oh yeah, and they just like shrug. After Eragon decides, yeah, I'll eat meat now, it's okay, it's really never brought up again. Like, he made a big deal of telling everyone that he doesn't eat meat, and then he goes back on that, and then no one ever is like, hey, why are you doing that again? Didn't you say you wouldn't do that anymore? No one ever says that. Not even once. It's awesome. And as I said before, Eragon becomes a lot more wishy-washy on the whole does God exist thing, especially after he supposedly sees the dwarvish god. And the fact that in book 3 we get to see a dwarvish god show up, that's supposed to be a big thing, like that counteracts the weird messaging around the elves' opinion of a god. But he also doesn't commit to it. Like, he doesn't say that the dwarves actually have a god. Even the dwarves that talk about it are like, I mean, it's probably God, right? Probably, maybe. Yeah. And that's a really weird statement to come from people who ostensibly believe in that thing that they saw. And again, in a fantasy setting, you can have deities, and you can have it be unambiguous that there are deities. In fact, this is how most fantasy stories work, actually. I mean, Lord of the Rings unambiguously has a system of deities. The world was sung into creation by the blah 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 and their choir and blah blah blah, you know? And yes, I did say blah blah blah, even though I know the names of the fucking things, because I do not respect Lord of the Rings lore nerds. Come at me. You all care way too much about this book that is 100 years old and spent 10,000 pages describing a tree. Chill. I mean, realistically, the Lord of the Rings is actually pretty cool, but, like, people get way too into it. Kind of like with Star Wars. I don't understand it. Anyway, my point is that it's not weird for a fantasy setting to contain deities. And it's not weird for a fantasy setting to contain diverse races with their own opinions about how to live and what the religion should be and stuff. And we do kind of see that throughout Eragon, but Book 2 really stands out because of the way it's presented to the audience, like through Eragon. Like, it's a direct lecture, right? When we hear about the belief systems of the Urgles or of the dwarves, they're just like offhanded explanations of what these people believe. But when we hear about the viewpoint of the elves, it's told directly to us like we're supposed to be on the elf side and agree with them. And it's weird. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree that these messages were presented in a weird way? Do you think I'm blowing it out of proportion? Were you too distracted with Roran's amazing story to notice any of this? Maybe not that last one. Like, I do genuinely think Roran's story is better than Eragon's story after having listened to it as an adult, but, like, it just doesn't contribute to the plot at all. I'll talk about that in a future episode. In any case, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Hey, Endcard here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Like, seriously though, please subscribe. I have, like, no subscribers. It's sad. If you want to find me on other social media stuff, you can do that at the Golden Stalfos on basically everything. Links to that are in the description, as well as to some charities I like but am obviously not affiliated with. I also have a Patreon if you like me so much that you want to give me money. Though, obviously, only do that if you have money to burn. And if you do have money to burn, they're the charities I mentioned before. They probably need it more than I do. Mad ups to my girlfriend for doing all the editing for these videos. It's a really big help. Oh, and I occasionally stream on Twitch, so follow me there so you don't miss it. I don't have a formal schedule because when I tried to have a formal schedule, I couldn't keep to it. So, oh well. Okay, thanks. Bye.